Peachtree Corners, your neighborhood. Peachtree Corners, where life is good. When you want to know what's happening and keep up with the times, come be a part of Peachtree Corners Life.
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita, the weekly internet radio show keeping you current on the interests of the people, places, and politics in the city of Peachtree Corners. Be inspired, stay current, and be informed. Visit our website, PeachtreeCornersLife.com, for ways to listen to our broadcast live every week or download our podcast from iTunes.
Hey everyone, I'm Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Live. And I want to just take a few minutes to tell you, I was looking through how long we've been doing this, and it's been about 2.5 years. 2.5 years, 91 hours. Peachtree Corners Live is a weekly online radio show that talks about the issues that affect the city of Peachtree Corners. And I do this every week, along with, it's evolved to several other podcasts, including The Ed Hour, which is once a month with my co-host Alan Kaplan, and Prime Lunchtime with the city manager Brian Johnson. And we've been doing since April 2016. My first guest was Alex Wright, city council person here. We've done shows on issues like Simpsonwood, Save Simpsonwood, that's now a park. We've had novelists, writers, political candidates, teen pageant winners, veterans. We've covered opioid addiction, presidential politics, pedestrian bridges, backyard chickens, and I've even covered MomoCon. So a lot of stuff. So I want to say thank you also to our two partners, Explore Gwinnett. That's a partner of ours that helps us with the top 10 list we started 3 months ago. So you should find that online. By the way, Prime Lunchtime with Brian Johnson was done this morning at noon. So you should watch that Facebook. We discussed a lot of things about what's going on in the city, Town Green, the autonomous vehicle, how that's evolving a little bit and such, or a lot. And I want to thank Prototype Prime, our city's incubator that actually lends us the podcast studios during the day at noon and when we have larger groups. But tonight, as I do several Thursday nights a month, I have a special guest at my home office, a podcast here in the city of Peachtree Corners, just less than 2 weeks away, I think, election time. So Lynette Howard is my guest tonight, longtime resident of Peachtree Corners since '94. Right. I think. And she's currently Gwinnett County Commissioner, seeking her third term, Republican chemist by trade?
I am.
Chemist by trade. And she's seeking her third term here in Gwinnett County. So we want to talk to her about issues and about what you've been doing, what you're up to, and some of the issues that you're currently working on, initiatives and such. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you being here.
With that recap, I just also want to thank you. I didn't realize you did a podcast on saving Simpsonwood, and that really helped a lot for my ability to push to purchase it.
Yes, you weren't. That's right. You were on the county. Well, obviously, you've been on the county commission, and you were helping. Yes,
that's the largest check I've ever signed.
Without you, that would not be a park. That could have been 200 or 300 homes, actually.
Yes.
So glad that you were able to help us save that.
Well, it was a team effort, and it was just a wonderful thing that we had to do to preserve the character of Peachtree Corners.
Thank you. So what I want you to do is tell us a little bit about, and I'm going to be listening to the podcast and make sure I'm the engineer as well. So we'll make sure the sounds are going off and everything.
Get your different hats on.
Right. So I'm doing these things all together. So while I'm doing that, can you tell the audience a little bit about, who Lynette Howard is, what you've been doing the last 8 years? Because these commission terms are 4 years.
They're 4 years apiece, and so it's probably a good story to tell how I got here.
Yeah.
I was a chemist. I was a research chemist, and I had my first child, and so I was staying at home with her, and then I started complaining about the entrances of our neighborhood. There's 10 of them in Peachtree Station because they were all different colors and all different types of flowers. And it was, they were kept up, but they just didn't look cohesive and it didn't look like one neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So I complained a little bit, and then I had a little voice in my ear, like my dad saying, well, if you're complaining, you're probably not helping. So I was like, okay, so how about if I organize planting the same kind of plants in all of the different entrances. And so it took off, and so then all of a sudden I was chair of it. And so, and then I became president of my homeowners association. And then eventually we had a zoning that was going to be a huge complex of apartments where our town green is now going to be for the city. And I never knew. I
remember that, yeah.
And I never knew that there was anything called planning and zoning. In the chemistry side of the university, you don't really...
Which university?
I went to Georgia State.
Okay.
And so never really even knew that there was planning and development. Just had no idea. So I got to learn about it, and I love learning. So I just delved right into it and started learning about it and what you could and couldn't do. Mm-hmm. And so I got involved in fighting that, and also at the same time, the forum was trying to be a Lowe's.
Right.
And so it was right in the middle of two Home Depots, and Lowe's really wanted that property right behind Amberfield that had just been developed. And so having those beeping...
Yeah, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine that being a Lowe's, actually.
And
over
so,
there.
But that's what it was planned to be, and they were going to go. They were permitting for it, and so the community and got together, and I had some knowledge about what you could and couldn't do, and working with UPCCA, which is the United Peachtree Corners Civic Association, and so we worked hard to stop the apartments as well, and it went through litigation and all of that, but we also worked on the particulars for the forum, which I think is like the model that everybody should do.
I saw the conditions on that. I think there was 20 plus pages. I've never seen conditions that long.
Yeah, there's a couple of conditions that I just won't own up to either. But I mean, the fountains were really important, and having that center island where everybody came to, and the awnings. The awnings were a huge thing that weren't part of the original zoning, and we said it was important because we do have pop-up showers. And we wanted it, and it can be hot, and we wanted it to be a comfortable place for people to hang and shop, and for the whole place to be successful.
Interesting, because I mean that's landscape approval, architectural approvals. Most people don't understand that can be controlled by a county.
Yes, it can. And
or by
it should
city,
be,
for that matter.
and it should be.
Yeah.
It should be, because you want to make sure that you protect the investments of other businesses that are already there or going to come in the future. So you want to make sure you keep a high standard and kind of a cohesive look. You want to make sure that when somebody drives into Peachtree Corners, they know, oh, I'm in Peachtree Corners, because there's some things that are similar. There's a water table on all of our buildings. You don't notice immediately that you have those kind of similarities, but you also want them to be unique. We don't want every building to be exactly the same height and straight across, because then it becomes more cookie cutter. So we like variety, but we also like to have something that connects all the way through. And so we have that in our neighborhoods. We have certain trees that are planted in different neighborhoods and plantings, and so it's a cohesive kind of thing. Okay. And so then I became, surprisingly, vice president of UPCCA's land use for many years.
Yeah, I remember that. Yes.
And then I was president. And I was president of that, and just really enjoyed. I don't know. I sometimes miss being president of UPCCA because I knew what was going on right when it was happening. Because we would have our meetings monthly, and I mean, they would go on for hours, but it was just so much fun.
I remember some of those meetings, and it's just like, man, you'd be there for 3 hours sometimes, and yeah.
The thing I loved is I'd always clean my house, and it would be clean for that event, and then I always got to bake, and baking is one of my favorite things, and so I got to share.
Oh, okay. I'm even talking about the public meetings. I
The
didn't
public
realize
meetings,
the
yeah.
home meetings. Yeah.
I had the home meetings, and they would be in my dining room. And I remember Natalie, who's now getting ready to graduate from college. She was a little tiny thing. She's like, "Mommy, I want to serve the dessert." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know she could even hold the plates because she was so tiny." So it's been wonderful. And then I was appointed to the Planning Advisory Committee that plans the unified plan for the county for the future 20 to 30 years. And so Burton Asudi, the previous county commissioner, appointed me to that. And that was an amazing look at the complete government of Gwinnett County. And And then after that, I finished that stint. That was a 2-year stint.
Right.
And then I was appointed as a planning commissioner after you, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I loved it. I loved working with the community. I loved explaining to them that when a rezoning happens, it's like the most ideal time because a developer wants to get going. But they can't get going unless they appease the wishes of the community. And so you can really ask for a lot of things, and you might get some of them.
And, that's the part I enjoyed when I was on the Planning Commission, too, because you're right. That's the time when they ask for a special use permit. Well, there's things that can't be fixed. That's how Beaufort Highway started evolving because of special use permits and how they were conditioned. So I get what you feel. You do, and then you see, actually, after it's done, you actually see it come to fruition.
And I've seen it happen over and over time. And I love working with communities that are like, oh, well, the government already has a it's already a done deal. And I was like, no, it's not. Let's get together. Yeah. You tell me what you want. And then we can tell the developer what we want, and we get everything, and on a piece of paper, and then we say, okay, how many of these things can we have? And I can tell you, more times than not, we usually get everything on the list. Sometimes a developer will say, I can't cut down the number of homes to half. I can't make it work. And so, and we're reasonable in the community, and we know that. So we can work with them. How many can you have? Right. I mean, how little, how big? What are the amenities that we want to keep in the character of our community? And so I've enjoyed, as a county commissioner, going and working with different communities and setting up similar things to UPCCA in their communities. And so we've done it in several places in my district. It's exciting.
It is. I can imagine, because when you see that on such a local level, I can understand people getting upset with national politics and how can we change things. It's very difficult. You don't see it. But on a local level, on a city or county level, it's so much different to be able to do that. And you've been involved in quite a few things. So, we have a bit of time. Okay. So I want to be able to talk about a few things. One of the first things I want to talk about is an issue that maybe some people aren't quite aware, or they are aware of it, but they don't think Gwinnett County really might have such issues, or at least to the depth that we need to take care of it. And homeless issue is what I'm talking about. And you had discussed a little bit prior to the show, a little bit about that. So tell me a little bit more about the initiative, or about what you're looking at and in the situation of homelessness in Gwinnett County and what that means.
When you have 1 million people, getting close to 1 million people, you're going to have homelessness. And we have, I believe it's over 1,700 students in our schools who are homeless, who are technically homeless. And so we have wonderful volunteers and contributors that will make sure that these children are not going home hungry on the weekend. Right. And so I will see their backpacks are very, very heavy, but they're taking food home for their whole family for the weekend in their backpacks.
Some of the programs at Peachtree Elementary, I think, and some of the other schools I visited have been doing that.
And so a lot of people think homelessness is just because it's a choice. You made the bad decisions, you weren't doing this, you weren't doing that. The reality is you could have a job, you could be trained for a job that's just now obsolete, and there's no way for you to get a living wage because you're not trained for anything else. You're just specifically trained for one kind of job. Those are actually the homeless that it's easiest to get off the street because we can retrain. We have Gwinnett Tech, which is fabulous, and it's very nimble, and it can get you into the industries and what they need right now. But we have some that have diseases, and they have all different kinds of diseases. And it could be dementia, it could be Alzheimer's, it can be addictions, it could be a mental condition. It also can be developmental disabilities. I know a gentleman that he has developmental disabilities, and he has outlived both of his parents. And so how do we service those kind of people that really just need somebody to just check on them and make sure that they're okay. So when you have homelessness, it's just, I think, something that we all could be I mean, there's always a chance that any one of us is just two steps from being homeless.
Absolutely.
You just never know if there will be a debilitating disease, or you get into a car accident and have a brain injury. There's all sorts of different things. And sometimes people don't have the family that can take care of them. We like to have everybody. So it's been something that I've been on Viewpoint Health, which is our mental health CSB. It's a community service board, and it's to take care of people who have mental conditions and that they need, and developmental disabilities. And so learning more and more about people that were homeless and how they need to have help. Some of them can be trained to get a job and self-sustain themselves. Some cannot. Some just aren't going to be able to. If you have Alzheimer's, you're not going to get trained for a new job.
So how do you take care of them? If they're on the streets now, how does Gwinnett County look to take care of them?
Well, we've had different things happen. I don't know if you know, the Department of Justice closed down our hospitals, our mental health hospitals. And so they're supposed to be housed in units that are in neighborhoods. Well, it's difficult because a lot of people don't want people that they don't understand in their neighborhoods, and they're very fearful of it. And there's a saying, not in my backyard. And so I've really been looking at this and trying to shape it and trying to figure it out. And we have service providers, like Rainbow Village is a perfect example. They do a wonderful job, and they're over 90% successful in getting somebody back into society and able to self-sustain themselves. So how can we do that again? How can we help all of these different agencies that are working hard to help with this issue, and also not putting them in our jails? Because if you don't run out of every place to put them and you don't have a bed, we have beds at the jail, which is the wrong place.
That's not the place to put them,
It's
though.
not the place.
Right.
It's expensive, and it trains them to be criminals because you're putting them with criminals to train them.
Yeah.
And so it's the wrong thing. And so Gwinnett County, we worked on the accountability courts. So we have 2 drug courts. We have a VA court. We have a mental health court.
Okay.
And so we're really good at that, and we're developing it, and we're the leaders in Georgia, I think, with the accountability courts. But we needed to do a little bit more. And so what I was finding is all of the different agencies were not working well with each other. They were going and kind of hunkering down into themselves because the way grants are done now, they were becoming more competitive. Instead of being one team, they had to fend for themselves, and that's a bad situation when you're trying to help other people. And so I sat down and just started working with Denise Townsend with United Way. She's an amazing lady. And so we started mapping out what it is that we need in Gwinnett County. And what we realized is when somebody is identified as homeless, whether they're just walking the streets, being a nuisance and possibly getting arrested, that perhaps we needed a warm hand, and that's warm hand handoff, to assess them and see what they needed. Do they need mental treatment? Do they need job training? Do they need just a home? Because they're not going to be able to retrain themselves.
So an advocate for them, in a way.
An advocate for all of the people who are doing those services, so that they can work now as a team, and we can identify who does that training best. Well, then let's build up that person to do training, and then you may do training, but you may do dealing with the education of small children better. So perhaps we just try to move their children over here and the job training over here, and kind of organize it among the different organizations, but then have it so it's a warm handoff, and then we work on getting the grant funding so that it goes and gets distributed where it needs to be.
So the county would get the grant funding and handle the budgeting of that to these organizations?
Well, what we're doing is we're doing it in partnership with United Way, and United Way is taking that on. And so we're helping subsidize it, and they are matching our funds. So we set aside in this past budget $500,000, and United Way agreed to match it, and they agreed to hire somebody to be in charge of it. And so we did. This summer we hired Matt Elders. He used to be with Family Promise and set up the Salt Lake shelters.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. And so he's going to be doing the first one in conjunction with Lynette, who they have a church that's over on Pleasant Hill. Mm-hmm. And so he said, we're trying to work it out with a church and getting a new one. And I said, I think I know where that church is. And before you do any more steps going towards it, I think we need to meet with the leaders in the community. And again, I go back to I had set up a homeowners association that was similar to UPCCA. Not as big, but just as active. And so Danbury Oaks is a neighborhood that was right behind the church that I thought it was going to be in. He goes, well, no, I haven't told anybody who it is. I was like, I kind of know my district. Right. And so, and I said, I bet you it's the John Wesley United Methodist Church. He goes, how did you know? I was like, because I know that church is struggling and the conference is thinking about closing it. He goes, well, they are closing it and they're considering us doing a shelter there. So I said, well, it'll affect the neighborhood. So, and the neighborhoods around it. So, we had a meeting, and Matt Elders explained to him what they were possibly going to get in the neighborhood, and they're tough ladies. I'll tell you this: there's 5 really tough ladies, and they came with pages of questions that they had already gathered from their neighbors.
Good.
So they asked them everything, and by the end of it, they just all looked at each other and they kind of huddled and they said, "Yep, I think we can support this." Okay. We'll go back to our neighbors and we'll tell them exactly your answers, as long as you can agree to some of the conditions that we have. Like I said, you have to make sure you ask for those conditions, and you can't get them. And so they did, and Matt,
that's a good buy-in. I mean, communities have to do that buy-in, otherwise
it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't want somebody, you don't want a place where you're trying to heal people and the community doesn't want them to be there. Right. And so there's a lady that lives over there that she has been knitting and teaching other people to knit. So she's got a whole stack full of hats and blankets for whoever, for the people who are going to come into the shelter. And so they're excited. They're ready for it to be open like now because they're ready to bake for them.
How many people can be held in that shelter?
I don't know yet, but it'll also be an assessment place where people can come and get assessed of what services that they really need and get them to them.
So it's not necessarily, I mean, people can't stay there, I guess?
They can stay there in an emergency type situation. And that detail is still being worked out. It's probably going to be anywhere from 1 night to 7 nights as emergency, as a bed would open up someplace else. Right. It's not meant for continued stay like at Rainbow Village or something like that, but maybe perhaps looking for a bed at Rainbow Village and waiting for that, but just really assessing them and trying to see maybe the children have been going to a certain school and they'll try to keep them at that school. There's all sorts of different things, but it'll also be a place to teach classes of how to use your SNAP funds to make nutritious meals that are fulfilling and stretch your dollars further. It might be training classes so that you can make some extra money after work, so that you can bridge that gap and make it
whatever that individual needs,
right.
or mental illness help or whatever.
And that will get you into Viewpoint and getting you the right help. I mean, if you don't have mental issues, then why are you going to go and get intensive mental?
Sure.
But if you need them, and sometimes it's just medical. Somebody might have high blood pressure, and their blood pressure is just out of control. And so that will cause a lot of calmness and getting them where they need to be.
So these are people voluntarily showing up.
Right, or they could have been picked up by the police, and instead of we're diverging them away from the jail and away from the court system and going this way. I mean, they will be assessed. Right. So, I mean, we're not putting violent people there.
No, of course not.
So, I mean, if they need to go to jail and they've been breaking laws and they're,
and there's accountability and such, that's going to be part of that.
Right.
So the initiative, is that the initiative that you were mentioning? That
yes. This is exciting. So it's going, there's the United Way has really stepped it up, and the Atlanta Region United Way, we actually had a meeting this week, and they're excited about it, and so it's really taking off, and a lot of partners with the chamber helping and the county, and everybody is working together. The schools have always been helpful. I mean,
Alan Kaplan and I visited one of the schools nearby, and they were telling us a little bit about kids that are homeless or there's another word. It's not just homeless, although they're not counted as homeless. They could be. It's when you have multiple families within a dwelling. Mm-hmm. So are they homeless or they're not homeless? I mean, they could be counted that way, obviously, because they're not in their own home.
Right.
They might be sharing because they've had bad luck with their...
And there's families that, the children might be sleeping on a couch for 1 week, and then they go to another home for a week. Right. And so they're able to do that, but it's not a home. And so...
and so these schools are dealing with homelessness also. It's amazing. It's amazing what Gwinnett County schools do for kids like that, for families that are challenged that way. So it's being affected everywhere, it seems.
And there's probably not a bigger champion than Louise Radloff.
No, I'm sure.
And I serve on Viewpoint Health with her, and she's just like, well, we just have to fix this. Let's just know that you just do. So,
we have a great place. We have our county is we are diverse, right? 60% of our population, I believe, is minority, African American, Latinos, Asian. A big shift from when I moved here in 95.
25% are born outside of the United States.
That's right. So and I look at, I'm first generation American. My parents came from Italy. You're Cuban immigrant parents, right?
First generation.
First generation American.
Yeah.
Born here in the States,
I was.
right? And I never knew that. I never Cuban heritage. Cubans, Italians, Latinos, we're all the,
the spice of life.
That is, and it just makes it a good family dinner when you can go to your friend's house and also have ethnic food too.
It's wonderful.
So, but we are a changing community, and it's changed from. I remember from when I was on the planning commission, there would be 200 acres of farmland that all of a sudden they wanted to move. They wanted to move either further north or whatever, and they sold their land and became maybe 200 homes on that piece of property, or became a retail strip or something, or both. I mean, there's just been a lot of development going on in Gwinnett County. We have 1 million people almost we're approaching. Parts of our counties can be considered almost urbanized in a way.
I think so.
Right? What plans does the county have in dealing with such a growth and the diversity of the county the way it is? Is there...
Well, it's two different things that's melded together. I think that the important thing is to make sure that everybody is at the table. It's important that all these different cultures have a voice, and they come together and they share what they have were good things and bad things in development in their own country. And it's a fabulous resource that very few places have. A lot of people have diversity that's just 1 or 2 different areas.
It's not like
we
us,
have
right?
it around the world. Our new unified plan has a map of where everybody comes from, and I can't even believe there's some people from Australia here. But
there's a big population of Brazilians in Atlanta.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many.
And so, I mean, I have a huge population of Vietnamese and Hindi and just there's probably every religion is practiced here.
Yeah.
Every food. I mean, if you really want a type of food and you say you can't find it, just in my district, you're just not looking.
Yeah, I don't understand that. I went through that with Explore Gwinnett and the food bucket list. We just did a top 10 list, and they do a soul train.
Yes. South of Seoul.
Right, south of Seoul. It's Seoul. So it's
right.
So it's I mean, this just you can't. You're right.
It's booked. I can't even get a place in that because it's been booked like 3 and 4 tours out.
It's amazing.
But it's wonderful of all of the Korean different eateries. I mean, there's just all sorts of there's Cuban, there's Italian, there's Vietnamese, there's Ethiopian, just a wide variety.
And so with that variety, do you think the county is able to address their needs also? I mean, it's a growing need. There's different populations that want different things maybe also.
Well, I think that's what is so important, to have them at the table to discuss what are we doing in our unified plan? What kind of housing are people used to? I'm used to, my mom growing up, is you never had a garage facing the front. You just didn't, because you wanted your house to be there and you had your garden and everything. Well, we have populations that want their garage in the front because they come from a place where it doesn't have cars and they want to show off. They're affluent enough to have a car.
Sure.
Never thought of that, but that's why we need to have that population at the table to explain. Not every neighborhood needs to have the garages on the side or the back. They want to have them in the front, and there's a reason, and it's not a bad thing. And some people want a really large mansion kind of thing.
Right.
Some people like it very efficient. They don't want to be in their house. They don't need a big office. They just need a table. That's where they put their computer.
And sometimes there's multi-generational. They want to live together. I mean, California's doing what's called the granny house. Everyone knows it as tiny house, right?
Right.
And they want to be able to build those on if it's a large enough property, to be able to build those too. So this way you have...
And it goes back to history that we had accessory dwellings. I mean, how many times have we seen, garages that had an apartment up top?
Right.
You had a college student, or you had grandparents that were staying up there, or a basement, or a little small house in the back. And we've gone away from that in Gwinnett County, and now we have it back in our
Do you see that coming back more often now?
It is, because there's also people who want to have a large investment. And to get that large investment and to get into the house that they want or the neighborhood they want, they really need to have an alternate income. And so being able to rent part of their property to somebody else is a way to bridge that gap. And so we're seeing it a lot. There's a very successful one that's over in the downtown Norcross called the Vineyards.
I didn't know.
And so they all have accessory dwellings that can be used.
Separate or attached?
I think there's both, but they're mostly, they're within the lot. But it's a way that they can have a separate entrance and they can rent it out.
Okay.
But it's a way for small families and that may not have a lot of money to be in with a more stable community. And so I think it's a good mix. Maybe a college student that's working on their master's or PhD and they just don't have the income, but they want to live where they're near something.
Or sometimes, like when we bought this house, we bought it because there's sort of an in-law suite. So when our in-laws were able to stay there,
right?
They both passed away, but they had their own living space,
right?
And when you talk about immigrant families, a lot of them are like that,
and they're very close. And it's so we have to understand that, and then we also have the understanding that we have great schools, we have great businesses here, we have fantastic parks. People want to live here. That's why they're coming from around the world. We have the best from around the world coming to Gwinnett County. So what does that mean when we get more and more, and we're starting to get to 1.5 million people?
Yes. Where
are they going to be, and how are we going to get around? It's really important that we start rethinking, instead of having residential here, commercial here, office here, where you have to get in your car to get to those places.
Right.
We need to have them more integrated in places where we have more densely populated areas. And our new unified plan really designates those areas. Of course, it will be along 85 and 316.
That would make sense.
And it's where we can have the infrastructure easiest to get there, clean water, sewer capacity.
So things like Infinity, for example, Infinity Energy Center.
Right.
They want to build a whole multi-use whole thing there where you can live, work, play, go to concerts.
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking more like that, right?
Right.
Multi-towers, maybe condos.
And OFS that we're in the process of purchasing, that one has an overlay on it that has high-rise office. I mean, it's where it's where a lot of the taxes have been generated since the beginning of Gwinnett's real growth. And so that property has a chance to turn over and produce more taxes that keeps our tax base low. And so for residential. And so it has multi-story, and I think it has a minimum of 10 stories. So it can go above that. But it also has the water capacity where you don't have it. The only other place that you have water capacity like you have in that area is up around Gwinnett Place Mall. So we're trying to improve it around the county.
Okay.
But where you have that water capacity is where you should.
And when you say water capacity, you mean?
Pipes that can hold all the water.
Just so that everyone understands that. So, yeah.
Both removing wastewater and delivering.
Right. You want to be able to get those sprinklers going.
Right.
God forbid there's a fire. But that's good that that the county's looking at being able to grow up as opposed to just keep expanding out and just taking more. I mean, we have, I forget how many parks in Gwinnett County, 48?
48.
48 parks. So, and that's a lot of parks. I mean, probably more than any other county, I bet.
And we're the number one park system,
in
according
the country,
to in Sports Illustrated,
Yes.
2 different years as the best in the country.
Phenomenal. I mean, so we have parks. We've taken over parkland that, I mean, there's one park that I think that's 1,800 acres. I forget, Tribble Mill or one of those.
And if you ever go walking on there, I've tried to visit different parks so I can go to all of them and say I have. But if you look, it looks really tranquil and beautiful, and you could just walk, really casual walk around the lake. Oh my gosh, it's a really long walk.
Yes.
I got a good workout there.
Got stuck on one of them. We hit the wrong trail, me and my kids, because one of them was closed or something. We ended up doing 8 miles instead of 4 miles.
Yeah,
it was just like
you can easily do it.
crazy. Yeah. But being able to do the development in the way that you're talking about planning also means we're moving people. 1.5 million people in a decade from now, let's say. You have to be able to move them.
Right.
I mean, in New York, we always took either subway or express buses, or in Long Island, if you were out on the island parked, which could be a 2-hour or 3-hour drive to the city almost, you would take high-end, high rail, Long Island Railroad.
Right.
Where it was, you just zoom right into the city. I mean, at some point, we need to be able to do that. There'll be people that'll be stuck in traffic for 2 hours otherwise going to work. So
exactly.
Now, you've been working on the MARTA plan, and there's been pros and cons on that. It's been, MARTA has always been something that Gwinnett has had a bad history with.
Right.
Of not wanting it for a variety of reasons. No need to get into the backstory, I don't think, necessarily. But
I think we do need to get into the backstory to tell about how this is historically so much different than what has been offered to Gwinnetians in the past. It's not the same. It's not the same.
So tell me why that's not the same.
It's not the same is because, well, there's 2 totally different things going on. There's House Bill 930 that passed, and it's been signed by the governor. And the ATL is a transit overlay of 13 counties. Okay. So that will stand up on January 1st. And right now they're coming up with the leadership and how that's being chosen. They're starting the meetings to find out who the delegation will be that'll be serving all of us on how to make a cohesive transit system across those 13 counties. Okay. So that will stand up. And so that is a huge piece of legislation because we really need to be regional instead of just concentrated inside the perimeter. But how it's different with the contract with MARTA is that in the past it was a 1 cent tax that went straight to MARTA. And that's the agreement that Clayton, DeKalb, and Fulton have with MARTA. Currently.
Okay.
And so Gwinnett, with our contract, it's not like that. We get the penny. Gwinnett gets the penny, and we have negotiated with them that we will have 29% go to MARTA to handle the bus systems and the technology and making sure that everything is robust and integrated and works for Gwinnett County. Okay. And so connecting it to their current system. And so 28 cents was agreed upon, or 29 cents.
That would just handle buses, though.
Well, to handle buses and transit, it handles everything, but initially it's going to handle the buses because that's the quickest, nimblest thing.
Sure.
And we wanted to make sure that the citizens benefited right off the bat. Okay. And so we negotiated that. We also negotiated that all of our different policing entities that are in Gwinnett County, like the different city, the municipality, municipal policing, and our county and our sheriff and our fire, we'll be able, we're working out the details on how that will do, but we got an agreement with them that we could make sure that they can come in and out of the system at will type of things to make sure we have a safe system.
So
because
not having transit police, quote.
Right.
but
We can
using the
have
existing.
we could have transit police, and that's fine, but it will be augmented by our own police to make sure that we keep our citizens safe. That's the most important thing. If we don't have a safe system, we really don't have a system that's going to ever work.
Sure. I mean, it needs to be able to be used, and if people don't feel safe,
Right.
it's not going to be used.
And so the second thing is cleanliness. It has to stay clean. It has. I mean, that's just the way we are in Gwinnett. We just we have a high standard.
Okay. Most people would agree clean would be nice. Yes. I
And
think.
then the third thing is efficient.
Okay.
If you were to leave to the airport in your car,
Right.
and I was to take transit, right now, even if I was at the Doraville station and you're here, more often than not, you're going to get to the airport before me.
Okay.
And so that's not an efficient system. And so there's no express system that goes on the MARTA system. And so the hub systems where everybody comes together and changes around and then goes out, so that you're not having just one system that stops at every single stop down to the airport. It's inefficient. So it's not making it so that somebody that doesn't have to ride MARTA or ride transit,
Right.
they're not going to choose that. And we need everybody to choose it.
So what are you looking at then? Because that's really the train aspect of it, right?
Well, the train aspect of it, me personally, I would like it as if they have their first train leaving at 6:10 in the morning. They have an express one that leaves at 6:05.
Okay.
And so I can already be down to the airport before they have all the other trains that are going to be stopping at every place. They could also do that again,
So do
like
the,
at 12.
the express leaves first, and then you have the local stops
Right.
behind it, but using the same rail, obviously.
Using the same rail, and I bet you that there's ways that we could work on that. That's just one idea. I mean, that's just me in my head, and
Right.
I come up with all sorts of ideas. But it really is going to be, everybody realize when you have more brains at the table, you come up with fantastic ideas. That's just mine. But when you get 20 people who are highly educated about transit, talking about transit, it's amazing the innovation that you can have. And if you inspire them to do it, we have to. And so I think that that's what's going to be so much different for Gwinnett. The other thing is that this referendum that's going to be on the ballot on March 19th
Right.
is it really is talking about, I mean, it is that
A penny.
penny,
Right.
but it's also 3 seats that sit on MARTA. And I think that always having a representation on an entity is a very powerful thing if they are the
So
ones.
what is it voting on then? It's voting to approve the penny from order, and
It's
it's voting to
Well,
approve.
the contract, I mean, if it gets approved by
Right.
by the citizens, then we get those 3 seats. We will
Okay.
have seats on the ATL, but that's not assured as seats on MARTA. And MARTA will be the hard rail no matter what the system is. And so if we are going to have any kind of hard rail, like a hub in Gwinnett County to connect it to the system, it will be MARTA. And so I just personally like having a representative at the table, because I think that is a way to know what's going on,
Sure.
and also to be able to have our voice at the table.
So the question is then, so it's a penny, so we have to decide to add a penny, which puts it to 7%, 7 pennies on the dollar. 38% was it? Goes back to
29%.
29 goes back to
And 71% stays here in Gwinnett County and grows in one pot that is designated only for transit.
And when we say transit, again, is it bus, is it rail, is it a mix of both? How does that work?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all of that. And it's also things like in the future with autonomous. Autonomous is happening, and it's happening a lot faster than a lot of us realize. And so how do you integrate that? I mean,
So could that be part of that?
that could be part of it. And I also, and Uber and Lyft are going to have to be part of it, or whatever
Really?
replaces them. It has to be part of that.
So how would that work with Uber or Lyft, though?
But it has to work. Well, we're already using it in some ways, and doing kind of carpooling for our seniors,
Okay.
and a lot of seniors don't know how to don't have smartphones, don't
Right.
want to know how to use
Right.
smartphones, but you and I could do it for our parents. And so we're working with Uber and Lyft so that we can mainly Uber right now, but going and saying, okay, there is a senior program that's happening at our senior center. Could you go and pick up these 10 people?
So part of that one penny will go towards helping or establishing that?
Well, not establishing that, because we actually already get funds
Right.
for getting seniors to their doctors and seniors to
Right.
to improve their quality of life. We already get grants for that, but using that in conjunction with what we are doing with MARTA or with any other entity we want to contract with, it makes it efficient. It makes it so that it balances out, and it's a better use of our resources, so that you're using it more and you're using it more completely. My idea is there's a lot of people that we have to get that last mile. They have, because they may be wheelchair bound, and we have to take them to their door.
Okay.
And so if we could organize it so that Uber or whatever car, an autonomous car, is there waiting for them when that bus gets there, or the rapid transit or light rail, if it's there and we have technology that can schedule it and get them to their home, and their whole trip is 20 minutes as opposed to an hour and a half, 2 hours now, that's a win-win situation for everybody.
Great. I like that. But what I'm thinking is, how many people are like that we would have, that would be assisted that way? And most people look at transit as MARTA, as the train, as a bus, as opposed to cars. Lyfts, Ubers, that last mile has to be, that last mile or 2 or 3 miles really, has to be a vehicle of some sort then. It has to be a car. It's a car or bike. In some cases, in Atlanta, they look at the last mile as not just a vehicle, a car.
When I'm
but
talking
they
about the
look
last mile, you can't use a bike. I mean,
Yeah.
these are people who are
on those types of people, right?
and we
need
have
that.
quite a large number. In the next 10 years, I believe that the statistics are that we're going to have over 200,000 seniors.
Okay.
And that'll be just in my district and going down towards
Really?
Stone Mountain. And so we have seniors all across, and we're having more. We're not seeing the seniors leave. They're not moving to Florida. They're not moving.
They're not
staying-
becoming
they're-
snowbirds or whatever.
No, they're actually coming here because we have a great life here, and seniors like that. So it's mostly seniors that this is improving their quality of life,
Okay.
and so that they can stay at home longer.
I know,
And
aging.
so there's a great need for it, and it's actually costing us. The grant funding isn't covering it, and so how do we do that? That we can say we're doing it really well, and we need to have more grant funding, and so we can attract grant funding, and we can
Right.
attract just funding. If we're doing it right, and I think that's what this is all about, is being able to utilize the technology that's out there. It's getting better every day.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, being a smart county, smart city makes sense.
Yes.
And you can be more efficient with
Right.
things. And we need to help the aging in place population. I agree with you there.
And we need to get people to their jobs.
Yeah.
And so if we can have more jobs in Gwinnett, that's what I'm really looking for. But the reality is that there's a lot of people that go into the city
Yeah,
of
for
Atlanta.
sure.
It's where our financial headquarters of a lot of different businesses are. And so how do we get them there efficiently? And it's all of our express buses that go downtown. We're not losing money on those. Those buses never travel without being full. I mean, and we've upgraded all of them so that they have Wi-Fi on them, so people can work on the bus as they're getting there. So it's I don't have all the answers. I mean, I can
Right.
dream and
No,
tell
no,
you,
sure.
but it's getting there, and it's getting there really well. And I haven't found people who are so opposed to transit like they have been before in the past.
Because I believe the population's changing.
And it's changing,
becoming-
and it's becoming more difficult. It's becoming the rush hour isn't an hour anymore. It's more like 3 and 4 hours, and then you might have
Yes.
little bit of a break, and then it's another 3 or 4 hours.
Yes.
And so But I encourage everybody to go. I've looked at a lot of different systems, but the one that's impressed me the most to be most usable in Gwinnett County is the new one in Charlotte. And Charlotte had an older system that had 9 miles, and they've added another 9 miles to 18 miles. And it's a light rail system. And if you get a chance to go up there, it just really is nice. You can go in and out of it at grade level. You buy your ticket, and you just punch it out. You can buy it anytime, and you just get on. And the police come in, and they're more like ambassadors, and they're up and down the aisles and talking to people, where are you from? But they also check your ticket and make sure you have a ticket. And it's just very convenient. And the development that's happening along that system is incredible.
So that's not similar to what the city, Atlanta's been doing. That's not light rail, actually. Atlanta's been doing the bus thing, the electric, and all that stuff.
Well, there's different variations, and so, we'll just see what happens. But I think that there's a real concerted effort to get everybody at the table so that we really have the best minds, the best thoughts, the best innovation.
And to, not to hit this on the head again, but it's been in the news and stuff. I mean, obviously to put the ballot to March means that we're spending $500,000 on that special election, and that's the only thing on that ballot.
It's not the only thing.
Isn't it? What's on?
No, I think there's also there's something with the schools that's going to be on there.
Well, there's a bond. No, I thought the bond offering was going to be
It's
on
in
this
November,
ballot.
But there was...
Right, the bond offering is on this ballot.
It is
for the
on this
school
ballot.
Right,
but I think that there's another one that's going to be... But that was not the reason why it had to be moved. We needed to have consensus among our board, but we also didn't have a signed contract with MARTA on the MARTA side to get it onto the ballot 90 days in advance. We tried to do it, and they tabled it. They didn't vote on it at that time, and so...
Do you think that was a political move on their part? Because obviously,
I don't want to say...
There would have been more... There would have been a big turnout, maybe,
No, this would have been on DeKalb's side.
Okay, so
DeKalb tabled it. DeKalb asked for a tabling of the contract to decide, and because they wanted to have more of the contract, a contract that was similar to ours for themselves, and so they wanted to make sure. And they actually made a public statement saying, "We'll agree to this, but know that we need to go and renegotiate what DeKalb has to do." And so they wanted to make a statement, and we were trying to downplay it because we wanted them to sign it. You don't just go and say something against somebody if you're trying to get them to work with you. Yeah. So we downplayed that, but we did not have a signed contract.
Okay.
It was more like 60 days out or less than 60 days, and state law won't let you put it on there because it has to be vetted and put on the ballot and all the
public notice.
Right. So.
All right. The other thing that we're getting towards, we're at 50. We're almost at the hour, but I just want to.
I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No. This was good stuff. I mean, we're a growing county, and it's good to see smart, intelligent discussion about the issues. So, aging population. The school bond is they're going to be going on the bond rating of the county. I'm assuming with that vote.
They have their own bond rating.
They have their own bond rating.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing was water innovation, because we're growing. We're going to be 1.5 million people at some point. We got to have water. Right?
We do have to have water, and there's something going on just for a few years called the Water Wars.
Yes,
between Florida and Alabama.
They still can't figure it out, right?
And once we get it settled, and then there's another one, and so so right now we're in litigation. I think we've had it decided at the Florida level, and then it was going to the Supreme Court, and we had special masters that ruled in our favor.
Okay.
But then the Supreme Court said they really didn't care for it, so now we have a new special master. And so, and then Alabama's promised to be right after that, coming back again. So, it'll always go on, and it's we've done really well in Gwinnett being innovative with our water. We treat water better than probably 99% of the world. We're just efficient at it. We do things really well. We remove the phosphates and we use it in Ostera, nutrient pellets, where we used to grind it out and replace pipes because it would just fill up the pipes till they sealed up.
Yeah.
And now we're removing that and pelletizing it, and now it's being used in farms in the right place instead of in our streams and our lakes, like Lake Lanier.
Okay.
So we're doing great at that, but we also have the Gwinnett Environmental and Heritage Center where we teach about water conservation and all things to deal with the environment. That's where I used to be a program developer. I loved it, getting to teach all about that kind of stuff. And so we had my stepfather is a retired chemistry professor at Georgia State. And so he has a program with the National Science Foundation where he put on workshops for professors all around the country to teach them to expose them to new industries that needed new kind of chemists. And so how could they change and modify their curriculum to accommodate the industry that was out there so that their chemists could get real good jobs, real jobs that were actually applicable to their education. So before he retired, I said, okay, you have to come. You have to do one on water, and you have to come out to the F. Wayne Hill. And he goes, well, that's a great idea. And he sold it to the National Science Foundation. He goes, can't we just go to like Atlanta or Fulton or DeKalb? And I went, no, you cannot. You have to come. I'm a county commissioner in Gwinnett, and you have to come to the F. Wayne Hill because I can give the tour and I can show it. So we have J.C. Lang. He is one of our engineers at the water plant. He's phenomenal, and he was explaining to him about how we removed phosphates. And they asked, is it a problem about phosphate 2s or phosphate 3s and this and that and the other? He goes, you know what I'm talking about? This is awesome. So he sat down and he started talking to him about all of the different stuff they were doing. The professors were fascinated. We had about 30 professors there. I mean, PhDs from around the country. Ohio State professors. I mean, Kennesaw. We had them near and far. And so they were completely fascinated. They were supposed to go to another stop that afternoon, and then
stayed there.
They stayed there. So they were like, "Can we just cancel those? And the happy hour, can we cancel that? We just want to stay here." And they did, and they stayed with the biologist and chemist and talked about it. And what were the things that they were seeing that chemists were just not able to comprehend that they needed? And so it really sparked where we already had innovation. We have some of the most brilliant engineers and chemists and biologists that work for us on our water system. But how can we get more people to be aware of this important thing that we have to take care of? And really the Water Innovation Center started really catching steam.
It's a beautiful space.
And so it is going to be a place that I think is going to synergize, that everybody is going to want to come next to the most brilliant minds and solve some of the water issues that will affect Gwinnett County as well as the whole world. How do you get arsenic out? How do you handle chemotherapy drugs that we haven't really filtered out, and they're only getting more and more complex.
I don't think even people understand when you throw away medicine like that into the water system, none of that can be filtered out.
Right.
I mean, Percocets, pain, although probably not those are being thrown in, but Ambien and other drugs, antibiotics that are not completed are being thrown away.
Right. And so how do you do that, and how do you do it in an efficient way that's effective without just really closing up the whole system? So we have to start talking about this, and they're very complex issues, and they're very expensive issues to get filtered out that we have right now, that we can't really do in a system where you're processing 30 to 700 million gallons a day. Right.
And does the obviously that's the big thing to do. That's where you can handle most of the water. But you still have thousands of homes being built, where the county can probably even, because as we said, you want a special use permit, you want a zoning thing, we can condition certain things. Now, I know in the city of Atlanta and a lot of other cities, they've conditioned buildings and such to have certain sustainable improvements done to them that normally you don't see in buildings. Yes, it costs a little bit more to do maybe, but we're heading towards a point where resources are going to lag behind the demand. And maybe the county looking at their at what can be done with development and what can be limited in those developments, or the types of toilets being put into homes, or the type of systems that are being placed in them.
Well, and I think the county has always done that, and I think that's why Gwinnett County has been so successful in how we've balanced the budget, how we're still attractive to the bond rating agencies. All three of them have given us a AAA bond rating, and we've had it for over 20 years. It's because you have to be planning for the future. We always plan 5 years and 30 years out. What do we need to be looking at that we have to do in the next 5 years to make sure that we're sustainable? But what do we need to be looking for in the next 30 years? And so for a long time, we didn't allow any companies to come into Gwinnett who were high water users. Unfortunately for a lot of people, that's breweries.
Yes.
Breweries require a lot of water in their processing. Yeah. And so because we knew that, then we didn't really allow them. We made it very difficult, and we don't have any. We're trying, and now you've got the little microbreweries that are trying to come in, but they're not heavy water users like a Budweiser or somebody like that. Yeah. And so so we've constantly been doing that. We built the F. Wayne Hill Water Treatment Center for a population that was 1 million plus people, and it's a good thing we did because we're almost at 1 million people. And when we had the serious drought several years ago, Gwinnett County citizens, I don't know if we just attract just awesome people, but we have awesome people, and what we did is we conserved so much water that the water bills actually weren't covering just the cost of running the building. Not the processing of the water, just running the building. And so, we got way lower. And so, and we were, and the governor was asking us to reduce by 20%, but I think we were 30% less than anybody else in the region.
That is funny.
And so, so we have to do that, and that's why we do our comprehensive plan, and we do it on a budget. Where we did that the year that I was on the Planning Advisory Committee was the first year that we tied it to budget. And ever since then, we have always done that, looking for if it's economically booming, if it's economically staying the same, or if it's a downtrend. I mean, what do you do, and what do you need to make sure that you maintain that you can't really let lag behind? So I have to say we're pretty cutting edge in Gwinnett County.
Seems to be.
Yeah. And so, and if there's anybody that has an idea, bring it on. We're ready to have those great minds.
All right. With that said, we are at the end of the hour, and I don't want to overstay our visit. So why don't you do what every candidate I ask do? Give the 2-minute speech of why people should vote for you and where they can find additional information out about you.
Fabulous. Well, it's my tagline, Together We Have a Voice. And Together We Have a Voice means that everybody gets to come to the table. I've always said I have very, very strong opinions. I mean, you've heard them throughout this interview. But I'm also open to convincing me with facts why I should change my opinion. I think that's a smart way to be. And so I've been fortunate to have a lot of people working with me. I interview for every single position that I appoint. I think that's fair to the Gwinnett County citizens to make sure I get the most qualified person at each position. And so I've just enjoyed the job and doing a great thing and working with all of the people in the community. And if you want to find out more about it, I have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram. I have to say that the Instagram information comes from my Facebook page and other information I give it.
Right.
Because you wouldn't want me on there because my kids don't want me on there.
And how would they find it's Lynette for Gwinnett?
Lynette for Gwinnett.
Okay.
And then I have Commissioner Lynette Howard, but Lynette for Gwinnett, and it's
the number 4.
It's not the number 4. It's
I'm sorry.
FOR.com.
Okay.
And then that will get you. And you can go and ask questions. You can donate if you want, but asking questions is the most important. And I've gotten some great questions the past couple of days. So great conversations are going on. And actually one lady is going to be heading up a task force, I think, to work on some issues.
Well, we've had a good hour, and I appreciate all the discussions about these issues. If you have an interest in Lynette Howard winning her election, go to our website, find out more information, donate money if you need to, whatever you need to do. Election's been ongoing since early election was October 15th. Mm-hmm. Goes through until November 6th. And remember, there's 2 elections, by the way. There's 2 places you need to go. The City Hall, if you're in Peachtree Corners, because there's a measure on the ballot for what's called the brunch bill. It's Sunday, moving back 1 hour of being able to serve wine or beverages at a restaurant. So there's that, but then there's the general election. Obviously, everybody's talking about, whether it be a blue wave, a trickle, or whatever it's going to be. Every politics is local, and I'm sure people are going to be voting based on the individuals and how they've affected their lives when it comes to local politics. So
if you don't vote, you can't complain.
That's right. People say that. I have a neighbor that says that constantly. If you don't vote, you can't complain, and that's a true point. So don't complain unless you're going to vote, because every vote does count.
And whether I win or lose, we'll always just work together, because building strong communities is what makes it a wonderful place to live.
I appreciate you coming out. So we're going to end the show. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Live with Rico and Rita. Check out our Facebook page. Download the Spreaker radio app for Apple, Android, and Windows devices, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter at PeachtreeCornersLive.com.